The Galactic Council's xenobiology facility was having the worst day in its 200-year history. 5 dragon hatchlings had broken free from their ceremonial eggs 3 hours ago, and the entire diplomatic wing had turned into a war zone. Tom Rodriguez heard the screaming before he saw anything else. He was pushing his cleaning cart down Corridor 7 when a Valkyrian scientist came sprinting past him, purple blood dripping from a nasty bite wound on his shoulder. The scientist didn't even slow down, just kept running toward the medical bay like his life depended on it. Tom stopped his cart and peered around the corner. The observation deck outside Containment Room 4 was packed with people, all of them keeping a very safe distance from the reinforced glass walls. Inside the room, 5 small dragon-like creatures were going absolutely berserk. They were incredible to look at, Tom had to admit. Their scales shifted colors between gold and deep crimson, catching the light like liquid metal. Their wings were still folded tight against their bodies, damp from the eggs. But every time someone got within 10 feet of the glass, those beautiful creatures turned into tiny nightmares. They'd hurl themselves at the barrier, jaws snapping, claws scraping against the reinforced material hard enough to leave marks. Dr. Phillips, the facility director, stood in the center of the chaos trying to maintain some kind of order. She was a tall woman with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, and right now she looked like she wanted to retire on the spot. "We need the containment team here now," she barked into her communicator. "And someone get Ambassador Krell on the line. We need to know if this is normal behavior." Tom had worked at the facility long enough to know that nothing about this situation was normal. The Dracovian eggs had arrived 2 months ago as part of a massive peace treaty. The whole galaxy had been watching. These hatchlings were supposed to be symbols of cooperation between species, proof that old enemies could become allies. Instead, they were biting everyone who came close. A young intern, Danny something, made the mistake of approaching the glass with a food tray. The largest hatchling lunged so hard it actually cracked the inner layer of the barrier. Danny dropped the tray and stumbled backward, landing hard on his back. "I said keep your distance," Dr. Phillips shouted. Tom watched quietly from his position near the corridor entrance. Nobody paid attention to janitors, which suited him just fine. It gave him time to actually observe what was happening while everyone else panicked. The hatchlings weren't just aggressive. They were terrified. Tom had seen that kind of fear before. His little sister Rachel ran an animal rescue back in Texas, and he'd helped her with dozens of dogs and cats over the years. The ones that bit the hardest were usually the most scared. These dragons had the same energy, that desperate cornered animal panic. Every time someone approached with nervous energy, hands shaking, voice tight with fear, the hatchlings lost their minds. But in the brief moments when the room was empty, when the observation deck cleared out, Tom noticed the creatures calmed down. They'd huddled together in the center of the room, making these sad little chirping sounds that reminded him of baby birds. "Maybe we should sedate them," suggested Dr. Ortiz, one of the senior xenobiologists. He had bandages wrapped around 3 of his 6 tentacles. "Absolutely not," Ambassador Krell's voice crackled through the communicator. The Dracovian ambassador sounded stressed. Sedation during the imprinting period could cause permanent psychological damage. The hatchlings must bond naturally with a caretaker within the first day, or they'll never properly socialize. "Well, they're not bonding with anyone," Dr. Phillips said flatly. "They're trying to kill everyone who gets close." Tom glanced at his watch. His shift didn't end for another 6 hours. He had the entire West Wing to clean, including this corridor. But something told him he wasn't going anywhere tonight. Security started ushering people away from the observation deck. The facility was going into lockdown protocol. Anyone non-essential had to evacuate to the safe zones until they figured out what to do with 5 homicidal baby dragons. Tom got waved through by a guard who barely looked at his badge. Maintenance staff were always essential. Somebody had to keep the place running, even during a crisis. He pushed his cart slowly past the observation window, stealing one more look inside. The smallest hatchling was pressed against the glass, not lunging or attacking. Just watching. Its eyes, brilliant gold with vertical pupils, tracked his movement across the window. For just a second, Tom stopped and looked back. The hatchling tilted its head, curious. Then another scientist rushed past, footsteps loud and panicked, and the moment broke. The hatchling shrieked and retreated back to its siblings, all of them bunching together defensively. Tom kept moving, but his mind was working. He'd been invisible in this facility for 6 years. People looked right through him. Maybe that was exactly what these creatures needed, someone who didn't approach them like they were dangerous experiments or precious diplomatic assets. Just someone calm, quiet, and completely unafraid. By the time he reached the end of the corridor, Tom had made a decision that would either get him fired or change everything. He just had to wait until the night shift started and everyone else went home. The facility had finally gone quiet around 11:30. Most of the staff had evacuated to their quarters or gone home entirely. Only essential security remained, stationed at key checkpoints throughout the building. Tom had the West Wing completely to himself, just the way he liked it. He worked methodically, the way he always did. Started with the break room on level 3, wiping down tables and emptying trash bins. Moved to the bathrooms, restocked supplies, mopped the floors. Normal routine. Nobody watching. Just Tom and his cart and the soft hum of the ventilation systems. But he couldn't stop thinking about those hatchlings. Around midnight, he found himself pushing his cart back toward Corridor 7. He told himself he was just doing his job. The observation deck was a mess from all the chaos earlier. Someone had spilled coffee. There were scuff marks on the floor from people running. It needed cleaning. That's what he'd tell his supervisor if anyone asked. The corridor was empty when he arrived. Through the observation window, he could see the 5 hatchlings huddled together in the center of the containment room. They weren't sleeping. Their heads kept moving, alert, watching the door like they expected another attack. Tom parked his cart and stood there for a moment, just listening. The desperate chirping sounds the creatures made cut right through him. They sounded so much like the abandoned puppies Rachel had brought home once, the ones that had been left in a box by the highway. Scared. Confused. Wanting comfort but not knowing how to ask for it. He pulled out his access card. Every maintenance worker had basic clearance for most rooms. It was necessary for emergency cleaning situations, biological spills, that kind of thing. Technically, containment rooms required special authorization. But technically, the system also counted severe disturbances as emergency situations requiring immediate sanitation. Tom had been working here long enough to know exactly how to word the override request. He typed into the panel, biological contamination. Food waste. Requires immediate cleaning. The system thought about it for 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours. Then the light turned green. The door hissed open. Somewhere in the facility, alarms were probably going off at a security station. Tom had maybe 2 minutes before guards showed up. But he wasn't planning to do anything crazy. He just wanted to try something. He stepped into the doorway, not entering fully. Just standing there in the threshold. All 5 hatchlings' heads snapped toward him instantly. The largest one, with darker crimson scales, started moving forward. Its body language screamed threat. Shoulders low, wings starting to spread, teeth visible. Tom didn't move back. Didn't tense up. He'd learned a long time ago that fear was a choice, at least a physical response to it. You could feel scared in your head and still keep your body relaxed. Rachel had taught him that while working with aggressive dogs. He slowly lowered himself down, sitting cross-legged right there in the doorway. Made himself smaller. Less threatening. His heart was beating fast, sure, but his breathing stayed even and slow. "Hey there," he said quietly. His voice barely above a whisper. "You guys had a rough day, huh?" The largest hatchling kept approaching. Tom could see its muscles coiling, ready to strike. 10 feet away. Then 5. Then close enough that Tom could feel the heat radiating off its body. The creature lunged forward, jaws open. Tom didn't flinch. Didn't pull away. Just stayed perfectly still, watching calmly. The teeth touched his forearm, pressing against his skin. A test bite, barely any pressure behind it. Tom had seen dogs do the exact same thing, checking to see if he'd react with fear or aggression. He did neither. Just kept breathing steadily, meeting the creature's golden eyes without challenge. The hatchling's jaw relaxed. Its pupils widened slightly. It pulled back, tilted its head, and made a completely different sound. Not a shriek or a warning hiss. A questioning chirp. "Yeah, I'm not gonna hurt you," Tom said softly. "Nobody here wants to hurt you. They're just scared. And you're scared. Whole lot of scared going around." The other hatchlings started creeping forward, curiosity overcoming their fear. The smallest one, barely the size of a house cat, moved the fastest. It scrambled right up to Tom and, without hesitation, climbed onto his lap like it belonged there. Tom smiled and gently placed a hand on its back. The scales were warm and surprisingly soft. The hatchling curled up immediately, tucking its head under its wing. Within minutes, all 5 of them had gathered around him. 2 more in his lap. 1 draped across his shoulder. The largest one pressed against his side. And the last one curled up on his foot. They were purring. Tom hadn't known dragons could purr, but that's exactly what they were doing. A low, rumbling vibration that he could feel through his whole body. That's when he heard the footsteps. Multiple sets, moving fast. Security burst around the corner, weapons drawn. Tom recognized the lead guard, a guy named Rick who usually worked the night shift. "Don't shoot," Tom said calmly, not moving. "I think they just needed someone who wasn't afraid." Rick stared at him, then at the 5 dragons peacefully sleeping on and around him. His weapon lowered slowly. "How are you doing that?" Rick asked. Tom shrugged carefully, trying not to disturb the hatchling on his shoulder. "I'm not doing anything. I'm just sitting here. I think maybe that's the point. Everyone else was trying to do something to them. Contain them. Study them. Feed them. Control them. I'm just being here with them." More footsteps echoed down the corridor. Dr. Phillips appeared, still in her pajamas with a lab coat thrown over them. Her expression cycled through about 6 different emotions in 3 seconds. Anger. Confusion. Shock. Wonder. "Mr. Rodriguez," she said slowly. "You just entered a restricted containment area without authorization." "Yes, Tom said. "I did. I'm sorry. It won't happen again." She stared at him for a long moment. At the peacefully sleeping dragons. At the complete absence of chaos. "Actually," she said, her voice changing. "I think you're going to need to do it again. Every day. Because whatever you just did, we need to understand it. And we need you to teach us how." Tom looked down at the small dragon in his lap. Its breathing had slowed, deep and steady. Completely trusting. "I can do that," he said. "But I'm still cleaning the floors. Deal?" Dr. Phillips actually laughed, a surprised sound that echoed in the quiet corridor. "Deal, Mr. Rodriguez. Now, can you stand up without them attacking everyone?" Tom thought about it. "Maybe give me a few more minutes. I don't want to wake them up yet. They've had a really hard day." Over the next 3 days, Tom's life changed in ways he never expected. The facility had officially assigned him to the hatchlings, though he'd insisted on keeping his regular janitorial duties. Something about mopping floors and organizing supply closets helped him stay centered, kept his mind clear. The dragons seemed to understand that. They'd float around him while he worked, curious about everything he did. Dr. Phillips had set up a special observation room where Tom could spend time with the hatchlings while scientists watched from behind one-way glass. It felt weird at first, being studied like he was the experiment instead of the dragons. But Tom understood why they needed to figure this out. On the morning of day 4, he arrived at the facility with his usual thermos of coffee and found the observation room already packed with people. Not just the regular xenobiology team, but specialists from 3 different star systems. Word had spread fast. The smallest hatchling, the one Tom had started calling Peanut in his head, chirped excitedly when he entered the containment area. It launched itself across the room and landed on his shoulder, nearly making him spill his coffee. "Easy there, little one," Tom laughed, steadying his cup. "Good morning to you too." The other 4 crowded around his legs, making those rumbling purr sounds. Tom had learned they did that when they were happy, content. It was the complete opposite of the shrieks they'd made that first day. He sat down in his usual spot, a worn office chair someone had brought in for him. The largest hatchling, the one with the dark crimson scales, immediately claimed his lap. Tom had privately named this one Boss, because it was clearly in charge of the group. "Alright, so what's the plan today?" Tom asked, speaking to the dragons like they were people. He'd found they responded better when he talked to them, even if they couldn't understand the words. It was the tone that mattered, the calm casual rhythm of normal conversation. Through the glass, he could see Dr. Phillips talking with a Dracovian official. The ambassador herself had arrived yesterday, her impressive 7-foot-tall being covered in emerald scales. She'd watched Tom work with the hatchlings for 3 hours straight, not saying a word. Dr. Phillips entered the room, moving slowly and deliberately. She'd gotten better at this over the past few days, learning to control her nervous energy. The hatchlings still watched her warily, but they didn't attack anymore. "Tom, Ambassador Cressida would like to speak with you," she said. "Would the hatchlings be okay if you stepped out for a few minutes?" Tom looked down at the 5 dragons arranged around him. "I can try. No promises though." He stood up carefully, and Boss immediately protested with a loud squawk. Peanut dug tiny claws into his shirt, refusing to let go of his shoulder. "Yeah, that's what I thought," Tom said. "Maybe the ambassador could come in here instead." 5 minutes later, Ambassador Cressida was standing in the containment room, towering over Tom and his chair full of dragons. Up close, she was even more impressive. Her scales looked ancient, each one etched with fine lines that might have been writing or just the marks of time. Tom Rodriguez, she said, her voice deep and resonant. You have accomplished what our most skilled handlers could not. These hatchlings have chosen you as their guardian. Tom shifted uncomfortably. Peanut was now sitting on his head. I didn't really do anything special. I just sat with them. That is precisely the point, Cressida said, moving closer. The hatchlings watched her but didn't panic. Our young bond with the first being who shows them true peace. Not control. Not dominance. Peace. Your scientists approached my children with fear disguised as professionalism. You approached them with genuine calm. She knelt down, bringing herself to Tom's eye level. Boss chirped curiously at her, recognizing something familiar. Among my people, Cressida continued, there is a saying. The strongest warrior is not the one who never feels fear, but the one who feels it and continues forward regardless. You possess this quality, Tom Rodriguez. You were afraid that first night, yes? Tom nodded. Terrified, honestly. I thought they might actually bite my arm off. But your body did not betray your fear. Your hands did not shake. Your breath stayed even. This is extraordinarily rare among the species we have encountered. She gestured toward the observation window. We have been testing your people. The humans. Running biological scans, measuring stress responses. And? Tom asked. And you are remarkable, Cressida said simply. Humans produce significantly fewer stress pheromones than most spacefaring species. Your bodies have evolved to mask fear responses. But more than that, many of you have learned to genuinely calm yourselves even in threatening situations. This makes you uniquely suited to work with species like mine. Tom took a sip of his coffee, processing this. So you're saying humans are good at pretending we're not scared? No, Cressida corrected. Some humans pretend. You do not. You have trained yourself, perhaps without realizing it, to actually achieve calmness. There is a difference. My children can sense it. Boss had crawled from Tom's lap up onto the armrest of the chair, stretching its wings. They'd grown noticeably over the past few days. Soon the hatchlings would be too big to all pile on Tom at once. What happens now? Tom asked. I mean, they can't stay in this containment room forever. No, Cressida agreed. They will need to return to my homeworld eventually. But first, they must complete their bonding period. Another 3 weeks, at minimum. And during that time, I would ask that you help us train others in your methods. My methods? Tom almost laughed. I don't have methods. I just talk to them and stay calm. Exactly, Cressida said. And that is a skill most beings must learn. You make it look effortless, but it is not. Will you teach others? Tom looked at the 5 hatchlings around him. Peanut had fallen asleep on his head, tiny snores whistling through its nostrils. Boss was grooming its claws. The other 3 were playing a game that involved jumping on and off his feet. I can try, he said finally. But I'm still mopping floors. That's part of what keeps me calm. Cressida's eyes showed something that might have been amusement. Then you shall mop floors. Perhaps the most important floors in the galaxy. She stood and moved toward the door, then paused. Tom Rodriguez, do you understand what you have done? You have opened a door between our species. The Dracovian Empire has been isolated for centuries because no other race could properly care for our young. You have changed that. After she left, Tom sat quietly with the hatchlings. Through the glass, he could see dozens of faces watching him. Scientists. Diplomats. Military officials. All of them looking at a janitor from Texas like he'd discovered fire. Boss climbed back into his lap and looked up at him with those intelligent golden eyes. This is all getting a bit crazy, huh? Tom whispered to the dragon. Boss chirped in agreement and went back to sleep. The testing started the next morning. Tom had expected maybe a few simple questions, but instead he walked into a full medical laboratory with equipment he didn't recognize and a team of specialists from 5 different planets. Dr. Phillips met him at the door with an apologetic smile. I know this looks intense. We just need to understand what makes you different. The Dracovian Empire isn't the only civilization watching this. We've had inquiries from 17 other species about human caretakers. Tom set down his cleaning supplies in the corner. The hatchlings had stayed in their enlarged habitat for now, though Peanut had thrown an absolute fit when he'd left. 17? That's a lot. It's unprecedented, Dr. Phillips said, guiding him to a chair surrounded by scanning equipment. Apparently aggression during bonding periods is common across multiple species. If humans have a natural advantage in handling it, that changes everything. The tests were weird but not painful. They measured his heart rate while showing him disturbing images. Monitored his sweat production during stressful scenarios. Analyzed his brain waves while he talked about the first night with the hatchlings. A Valkyrian biochemist took 17 different blood samples, apologizing each time. After 4 hours, Tom was exhausted and ready to get back to the dragons. But Dr. Phillips had him sit in her office while they compiled the results. The preliminary findings are fascinating, she said, pulling up charts on her display. Humans produce approximately 60% fewer stress pheromones than the galactic average. Your fight-or-flight response is significantly delayed compared to most species. Is that good or bad? Tom asked. For survival in the wild? Probably bad. But for interspecies cooperation? Incredibly good. She switched to another chart. Most species evolved on worlds where immediate threat response was crucial. They had to react instantly to danger. Earth apparently gave humans enough time to assess situations before panicking. Tom thought about that. We had predators too. Yes, but your predators were slow compared to what most species faced. A human could see a lion coming and have time to think. A Valkyrian's natural predator could strike in milliseconds. That difference shaped entire psychological profiles. A Catherine psychologist named Dr. Wen joined them, her silver skin reflecting the office lights. But the pheromone production is only part of it, she added. We've been reviewing Tom's personal history. You've worked in maintenance for 6 years, correct? 7 next month, Tom said. And before that, you were an EMT for 5 years. Emergency medical services. Dr. Wen pulled up his employment records. High-stress profession. You dealt with trauma, life-or-death situations, panicking people. Then you left and took a job cleaning floors. Why? Tom shifted uncomfortably. He didn't like talking about this. Burnout, I guess. I needed something quieter. My sister Rachel said I was carrying too much stress home with me. The janitorial work helps me decompress. Fascinating, Dr. Wen said. So you trained yourself, through years of emergency response, to remain calm under pressure. Then you deliberately chose a peaceful profession to maintain that calmness. You've essentially conditioned yourself to have an extraordinarily even emotional baseline. I just clean floors, Tom protested. No, Dr. Phillips said gently. You do much more than that. And you don't even realize it. They brought in other humans to test the theory. Danny, the young intern who dropped the food tray that first day, volunteered first. He approached the hatchling's habitat with visible determination. Boss took one look at him and hissed. Danny froze, his confidence evaporating. His hands started shaking. The hatchlings backed away, wings spreading defensively. I'm not scared, Danny insisted, but his voice cracked. Your body language says otherwise, Dr. Wen noted from the observation room. Heart rate elevated. Pupils dilated. The hatchlings can sense it. They tried 6 more humans. A security guard named Rita made it the furthest. She had military training and excellent self-control. The hatchlings didn't attack her, but they didn't approach either. They just watched her warily, waiting for her to leave. Tom was brought in after each attempt to calm the hatchlings down. By the 3rd time, he was getting frustrated. This isn't fair to them, he said. You keep parading strangers through here. They're getting stressed out. You're right, Dr. Phillips admitted. But we need to understand why you succeed where others fail. Can you explain what you do differently? Tom sat on the floor of the habitat. Peanut immediately rushed over and climbed onto his lap. Boss followed more slowly, settling beside him. I don't think about them as dragons or experiments or diplomatic assets, Tom said finally. I just see scared kids who need someone steady. When Danny came in, he was trying to prove something. Rita was following a protocol. Everyone's been approaching this like a test they need to pass. And you? Dr. Wen asked. I'm just here. Tom scratched behind Peanut's ear ridges, and the little dragon purred. I'm not trying to accomplish anything except making them feel safe. There's no goal. No pressure. I clock in, spend time with them, clean some floors, and clock out. It's simple. Dr. Phillips and Dr. Wen exchanged looks. That's it, Dr. Wen said. The absence of objective. Most beings approach unfamiliar species with goals. Establish dominance. Prove friendliness. Gather data. The hatchlings sense that underlying agenda. Tom has no agenda. He's simply present. But that can be taught, right? Dr. Phillips asked. To some humans, yes, Dr. Wen said. Those with the right temperament and training. Tom had a unique combination of emergency response experience, which taught him to stay calm, and conscious choice to pursue peace, which maintained that skill. We can replicate the training, but it will take time. Over the next week, they started a pilot program. 5 humans with backgrounds similar to Tom's were brought in. Former EMTs, firefighters, crisis counselors. People who'd trained themselves to stay calm when everything was falling apart. One of them, a woman named Beth who'd been a hostage negotiator, actually succeeded. The hatchlings approached her cautiously after an hour of her simply sitting and reading a book aloud. Not trying to interact with them. Just being peacefully present. Tom watched from the observation room and felt a weird sense of pride. You're starting something big here, Dr. Phillips said beside him. I'm really not, Tom said. I'm just the first person who tried being calm instead of being clever. Sometimes, Dr. Phillips replied, that's the same thing. Ambassador Cressida visited again that afternoon. She watched Beth working with the hatchlings through the glass. Your people have a gift, she told Tom. The ability to choose peace, even when evolution tells you to choose fear. It is rare in the galaxy. Perhaps this is why humans have become so successful among the stars. You adapt not by changing yourselves, but by changing how you respond to change. Tom had never thought about it that way. He was just a guy who mopped floors and liked sitting with baby dragons. But maybe, just maybe, that was enough. 6 months had passed since that chaotic first day, and the xenobiology facility had transformed into something nobody had predicted. The Galactic Council had officially renamed it the Interspecies Bonding Center, though Tom still thought of it as work. His work. The place where he mopped floors and took care of dragons. The hatchlings weren't so small anymore. Boss had grown to the size of a large dog, his dark crimson scales now shot through with veins of gold. Peanut, still the smallest, was about the size of a beagle. They could all fly now, short distances at least, and they spent most of their time floating alongside Tom while he did his rounds. It was 7 in the morning when Tom arrived for his shift. He carried his thermos of coffee in one hand and his maintenance badge in the other. The lobby had changed a lot. Where it used to be empty and quiet, now there were beings from a dozen different worlds waiting in designated areas. All of them watching. All of them learning. Morning Tom, called Rita from the security desk. The former military guard had become one of the program's success stories. She now worked with a pair of Kethrani juveniles who'd been just as aggressive as the dragon hatchlings before she'd applied Tom's methods. Morning, Tom replied. Busy today? 3 delegations, Rita said, checking her schedule. The Vormati want to know if humans can help with their bonding crisis. Apparently their young have a 90% rejection rate with traditional handlers. Tom whistled low. 90%? That's rough. Boss chirped from somewhere above him. Tom looked up to see all 5 dragons perched on the overhead lights, waiting for him. They'd started doing that recently, claiming the high ground until he arrived. Come on down, you bunch of show-offs, Tom said, continuing toward the west wing. The dragons swooped down one by one, forming a loose formation around him as he walked. The facility had expanded significantly. What used to be storage areas were now training rooms where human handlers worked with aggressive or frightened alien juveniles. Dr. Phillips had hired 15 new staff members, all of them with backgrounds in emergency services or crisis management. Beth, the former hostage negotiator, ran the training program now. Tom pushed his cleaning cart past one of the observation rooms. Through the window, he could see a young guy named Kevin sitting perfectly still while a spiky creature about the size of a cat circled him suspiciously. The creature was from a species called the Thoraxians, and apparently their young imprinted through prolonged exposure to non-threatening behavior. Kevin had been sitting there for 3 hours. Tom could see the strain on his face, the effort it took to maintain that peaceful presence. But he was doing it. The Thoraxian juvenile had stopped hissing about an hour ago, which was progress. Tom made a mental note to bring Kevin some water later. Nobody had told him that part of the job would involve looking after the handlers, but it had become necessary. Staying calm for hours at a time was exhausting work, even if it looked like doing nothing. He reached his usual starting point, the break room on level 3. The dragons settled around the room while he worked, each finding their favorite spot. Boss always claimed the top of the refrigerator. Peanut preferred the windowsill where the morning sun came through. Dr. Phillips found him halfway through mopping the floor. She'd learned to wait until he finished a section before talking. Interrupting him mid-task tended to disrupt his rhythm, and the dragons noticed when his energy changed. "The Vormati delegation wants to meet you," she said once he'd wrung out the mop. "They are offering a significant contract for human handlers. 20 positions, full diplomatic status, housing on their homeworld." Tom leaned on his mop handle. "That's good, right? More people getting help." "It's unprecedented," Dr. Phillips said. "6 months ago, humans were considered pleasant but unremarkable. Now we're being recruited across 3 sectors for specialized caretaking roles. Tom, you've created an entire new profession." "I didn't create anything," Tom protested. "I just showed people what worked for me." "That's exactly what creation looks like sometimes," Dr. Phillips smiled. "By the way, Ambassador Cressida is here. She wants to discuss the hatchlings' departure." Tom's stomach dropped. He'd known this was coming. The dragons needed to return to their homeworld eventually, to complete their development among their own kind. But knowing it intellectually and feeling it emotionally were 2 different things. He found Ambassador Cressida in the main habitat, the large space they'd built for the growing dragons. She stood in the center, her emerald scales gleaming under the artificial sunlight. "Tom Rodriguez," she greeted him. "Walk with me." They moved through the habitat while the 5 dragons played overhead, diving and spiraling around each other. They'd grown so much, become so confident. Tom felt proud and heartbroken at the same time. "They must return home in 2 weeks, Cressida said. "Their bonding period is complete. They will always carry your imprint, but they need to learn our ways now, our culture and history." "I understand," Tom said quietly. "However," Cressida continued, "I would like to make a proposal. The Dracovian Empire would be honored to host you as a permanent cultural liaison. You would live on our homeworld, help train our handlers in human methods, and maintain contact with your 5 children." Tom stopped walking. "Your 5 children?" "That is what they are now," Cressida said simply. "By our law and custom, you are their parent. The bond cannot be broken by distance. They will need to see you regularly, especially in their first years." "I'd have to leave Earth," Tom said. "Not permanently. A rotation system. 6 months on our world, 3 months on yours. We would, of course, compensate you appropriately. You would have the status of a minor ambassador." Tom looked up at the dragons. Boss had noticed they'd stopped walking and was circling back, curious about what was happening. The others followed. "Can I think about it?" Tom asked. "Of course," Cressida said. "But know this, Tom Rodriguez. What you have started here will ripple across the galaxy for generations. Already, 4 other species have begun recruiting human handlers. The Kethrani are discussing a cultural exchange program. Even the isolated Shin Collective has expressed interest in learning your methods." Over the next week, Tom watched as more and more handlers graduated from the program. Beth had refined the training into a structured curriculum. Meditation techniques. Emotional regulation exercises. Practical experience with progressively more challenging species. It worked. Not for everyone, but for enough people that the program had a waiting list. Danny, the intern from that first day, had finally succeeded with a juvenile Valkyrian. Tom had watched the moment it happened, the instant the young alien had relaxed and approached Danny with curiosity instead of fear. Danny had cried afterward, overwhelmed by the accomplishment. "I get it now," Danny told Tom later. "It's not about being fearless. It's about being so okay with yourself that fear doesn't control you. That's what they sense." On his last day with the dragons before their departure, Tom didn't clean. He just sat in the habitat while all 5 of them piled around him, the way they had that very first night. Except now they were too big to all fit in his lap. Boss's head alone took up most of his legs. "You guys are going to do great," Tom told them. "You're going to fly over mountains and learn to breathe fire and probably terrify some diplomats. But you'll remember to be kind too, right? That's the important part." Peanut, nestled under his arm, made a soft trilling sound. Agreement, maybe. Or just contentment. Dr. Phillips watched from the doorway. "Have you made your decision? About the liaison position?" Tom looked at the 5 dragons. His dragons. Then he thought about Kevin, still learning. About Beth, training the next generation. About all the humans discovering they had this gift for bringing peace to frightened creatures across the stars. "Yeah," Tom said. "I'll do it. But I'm bringing my mop. Non-negotiable." Dr. Phillips laughed. "I wouldn't expect anything else." 2 weeks later, Tom Rodriguez boarded a Dracovian transport ship with a duffel bag, his favorite mop, and 5 juvenile dragons who refused to leave his side. He was still a janitor. But now he was a janitor who'd accidentally taught the galaxy that sometimes the greatest strength wasn't in being fearless. It was in being calm enough to let fear pass through you like wind through an open door. And that simple truth, learned on night shifts and quiet corridors, was changing everything.